Welcome to the Education Innovators Podcast. I'm Eric Byron, and it is my privilege to host this show where I get to talk to folks from all over the world who are education thought leaders and innovators. We'll hear inspiring stories from educators, EdTech founders, AI experts, and others who are fearlessly innovating and delivering unique learning experiences. I'm glad you're here. Let's get started.
So here's what I've built. The whole thing kind of revolves, rather than being around the model, the little people here and what's in front of them, it's really about this wall. And there's this big sort of wall between what education systems really value and show us that they value by what they measure, and what the world outside of education is asking for.
Joel Birch is an excellent example of how to be creative and playful, even when talking about an important topic. With 20 years of experience in education, Joel is an advocate for active learning. And as a certified facilitator of Lego Serious Play, he's having a serious impact on schools in Australia. In this episode, he explains how and why serious play works. Keep listening. Well, welcome to the Education Innovators Podcast. I'm Eric Byron, and today I'm joined by Joel Birch. He's a longtime K-12 educator and instructional coach. He's also a certified facilitator and pro trainer of Lego Serious Play. He relies on the power of play, stories, and solving problems by thinking with our hands. Joel works with school leaders to help them conduct the big, important conversations that help them steer their school towards their preferred vision of the future. All right. Well, welcome to the show, Joel.
Thank you very much for having me, Eric.
Yeah.
Very excited to be here.
And you are in Perth.
I am in Perth, yes. The Whadjuk country in the southwest corner of Western Australia.
Awesome. Winter there, summer here.
Yeah,
we're
winter
in the same
here.
time zone.
We are. I think I don't know, I heard some statistic that 2/3 of the world's population lives within an hour either side of us.
Something like that. Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah. I know they say something like 1/3 of the world's population is within a 2-hour flight of Hong Kong, something like that.
Yeah,
It's just
incredible.
Amazing. Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah, the density of population. But yeah, well, great. It's awesome to have you join me here. I'm trying to think if I've had anybody else record with me from Australia. You may be the first to actually record with me from Australia. Although I've had some folks who spent time and worked there, you may be the first to record from that continent with me. So nice. Awesome. Right.
I'll try to do us proud.
There you go. All right. Well, let's warm up a little bit here. I want to go back in time and talk a little bit about your beginning here in the education side. So I spotted something in your profile in your early days of teaching at Our Lady of Grace School.
Yes.
Yeah. So you made a comment there about seeking a way to provide a pedagogically egalitarian classroom. So I thought this was an interesting comment. So I want to know what problem you were hoping to solve with a change in pedagogy, and how much did that early experience in teaching influence your next 20 years in education?
Yeah, for sure. I think probably where I was coming from with that was really just acknowledging right from the beginning of my career that the kids that walked into my classrooms were going to come from very different homes, very different backgrounds, very different families. You know, who they were as people was always going to be different from one kid to the next. And there was only one of me, and we were all in the one room together. So it's something that all of us as educators face, needing to balance that. But I kind of worked out, I set out, I guess, in the profession to not make the front of the classroom the absolute center of it, and to really listen to the kids, get to know who they were, and I guess try to make the best of it from that.
So interesting, but you talked about it as like a pedagogical change. So more than just kind of a shift in style. I mean, you wanted to really affect the way learning happens there. So, I mean, what have you seen? What's, influenced the next say stages you went on and you continued to teach in the classroom for a while, and you've been consulting and advising schools for a while. Um,
Yeah.
so how did that influence things?
Yeah, so I guess kind of the direction it took me was, and this is, we're talking mid 2000s here, before, when technology in the classroom was a little bit more delightfully cowboy than it is now. And yeah, I think that's where it led me. Yeah, those opportunities for kids to really kind of have a whole lot of voice, whole lot of choice in what they were doing, and the kids that needed things or wanted things to be a little bit more rigid, I was able to provide that for them,
Mm.
by having some digital tools up my sleeve. And the kids that wanted to be a little bit more fast and loose, a little bit more free spirited, there was room to provide that, while also, and that's kind of at each end of a continuum, while also having a presence of the opposite end of that continuum for those kids, because they're not exactly going to be able to micromanage and choose their, the way their life plays out.
Yeah.
And there will be times when the free spirits need to just walk in lockstep with a few other people, and then there's going to be times when those kids that crave something a little bit more rigid might have to let go of the handrail a little bit.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. It's kind of pragmatic in your approach. I've done a couple of episodes though that really went pretty deep in this egalitarian kind of concept. So, well, I had Nolan Bushnell on, right? The father of video games, the founder of Atari, and their whole premise, the reason we did the show is because they published a book. It's called the Exodexa Manifesto thing. Um, changing the future of education. So it is a very disruptive kind of model, and it's very student-centered, kind of free for all, not free for all, but very much kids in control. You
Yes.
decide when I'm going to study, what I'm going to study. And I also did one on Montessori.
Yep.
So yeah, and Montessori is very much that way, although they tend to be more on the younger kids side. But it is
Yes.
within a controlled framework. The kids decide what do they want to
Yeah.
do, and they do it. And it's so I like it conceptually. I love this idea of, instead of having a teacher standing in front and everybody in a very rigid, structured way. I also like that when we talk about this, we're often also talking about kids learning at their own pace. So instead of it just being lesson one, lesson two, lesson three, I've allocated 45 minutes for this session, and you better keep up, because when it's done, it's done. And, if you're lost, you're lost. Sorry. We're moving on because the
Yeah.
curriculum
Yeah.
says tomorrow we're doing lessons 4, 5, and 6, right? And so I like these systems that allow a bit more freedom for the kids to explore, learn at their own pace, and pursue what interests them when
Yeah.
possible. Yeah.
And I think for me as well, I think having spent a long time kicking around in local music and playing in bands and writing music as well, um, as songwriters, and as composers with my bandmates, we've always kind of taken that approach of the song is in charge. And I think I tried to bring that approach into my teaching as well, where whatever project, whatever kind of learning objectives we had in front of us, those are the things that were in charge. So yes, there was plenty of room for the kids to follow what they were interested in. There was also times when we all do need to move pretty quickly, because this is the pace of what we're doing. And then there's other times when we can slow down. The whole river slows down, and we can,
Yeah.
we can paddle a little bit more gently. But
Yeah.
kind of that sense of, it's not just about the people. It's also about, the environment, the surroundings, and what's going on, and kind of having a bit of that situational awareness for your own learning.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's cool. So are you a rock star, Joel? Is this what I'm picking up on? Did I realize I
I
was
mean,
talking to a rock star today?
I think it's more like latent aspiring rock star. I hope that I've developed enough wisdom over the years to leave a lot of that on stage.
Okay. Good for you. Well, I also just had a guy on the show who's a jazz musician from New York.
Oh, cool.
Brilliant jazz saxophone guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, Hayes Greenfield. You should look up that one. That was
Yeah.
well, in a very similar actually topic that we're going to talk about today was part of what attracted me to chase you down and get you on the show, was that he was also, the title of his book is, and his theory, I guess, the thing that he's promoting, it's called Creative Sound Play. And
Cool.
so, yeah, so it's again, play in the theme, right? He wants it to be
Mhm.
fun. Everything should be fun. And he's working with like preschool kids and with special needs kids doing sound, not music. And he's very specific about that. It's sound, not music, even though he's a musician, that this system works. And he came up with these whole set of activities that help kids learn executive function and develop skills, communication stuff through these sound activities. But very cool.
Yeah,
So
incredible.
yeah, so I had a jazz sax musician on. Now I've got a rock star and the guy who knows a lot about play, I guess. So
That's
yeah,
yeah, that's where I'm living my life at the moment.
cool. We're going to get into more of that. All right.
Cool.
I am though curious, looking at your resume, your profile on LinkedIn, multiple of your jobs have been around kind of technology and technology integration into schools. Yet your degree I looked at, right, was developmental and cognitive psychology. So
Yes,
you
that
didn't
was
study tech, but you ended up being the guy making technical recommendations. How did that happen?
really, I mean, if we're going all the way back to me starting university, I got into it with a big interest in psychology. And the original intent was to follow that all the way through and maybe go into some kind of clinical psych kind of direction. As I got partway through the undergrad course, the developmental, social, and cognitive psych stuff really started to light up a lot more for me. I'm the eldest of my generation in my family, so I've always had kids around me.
Mhm.
My mum's a teacher, so I think there's something that's just in the. I don't know if it's quite in the blood, but it's at least in the water.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that whole end of things started to really appeal to me. The way the mind develops, the way it acquires skills and acquires languages, and kind of how all that came together. Yeah, I started thinking about what my studies might start to look like as they turned into a career. And I kind of just thought I could do far more good in the world and be more sustainable about it with, you know, 30 broadly happy kids at a time than with a caseload of adults or young people who were coming to me because they were struggling with things. So I think it was just a bit of a mash of personality and burgeoning professional interest
Yeah.
that
Well,
that
there's
steered me in
certainly,
that direction.
yeah,
Yeah,
there
and
there
then
is
and then I,
honor in being a teacher and 30 at a time.
yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, and then I guess from there, where the learning technology thing started to come in for me was, I guess, sort of some of those principles of wanting to put the demands of the project in the real world into the hands of those learners in a way where they could kind of really blow the roof off and show us what they could do. Those sorts of things appealed to me, and I think just because that stuff was emerging right at the time that my career was kicking off, and there was a little bit of a time there, probably not actually that little bit of a time. I'm sure it still happens in some schools where it's like, oh, you're the young one, you can do the tech stuff because you understand this innately. So I don't understand it innately, but I'm not afraid to break it.
Right.
um yeah, because I had Napster on my computer at home, and I have done far worse to my parents' computer.
Oh, I love that. That's,
Yeah.
yeah. So, and I can relate. So I was in entertainment and got sucked
Yeah.
into IT, right?
Yep.
So, I was at Disney in entertainment, and yes, people discovered I could do things with the computer that most of the people in the office couldn't. I had no training, I had no
Yep.
background in this, never taken a computer class, and turned around one day and realized I'm now wearing a pocket protector and I'm running around working for IT. How did this happen? I'm an entertainment
Yeah.
guy. I shouldn't be in IT,
Yeah.
but
That's it. I was always pretty staunch about the fact that I'm not an IT guy. I'm
You don't come
I'm
across
here,
as an
yeah.
IT guy.
No,
Yeah.
like I'm here to talk about learning. If you want to ask me questions about how the network is set up, you will watch this face go blank.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
I kind of went
And
the other way.
and yeah,
I became
and
very
yeah,
technical.
yeah,
Yeah.
and your password is your job.
Cool. All right. Well, that does answer some questions for me too, because this was part of what I was curious about was how tight you stayed to education versus the tech side of it. Because you did spend
Yeah.
6 years. What's the name of the company? I put it in my notes.
With Winthrop as a
Winthrop.
traveling learning technology facilitator. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was where a lot of my instructional coaching practice came from. So I was working side by side with teachers in their classrooms, helping them implement the tech that their school was investing in, and really to design their learning for it, and to set up their classroom processes for it, and all those sorts of things that just make the stuff that's supposed to just work to actually make it just work when when you've got 30 rowdy youngsters in front of you as well. And then a whole lot of that, as well as those teachers became more confident, more capable, more creative with it. It was then taking that stuff back to school leadership to be able to say, hey, here's the stuff that's happening in your classrooms. In order for this to continue being a really good experience and for it to become a cumulatively good experience, we're going to need to talk about some of the things that happen at a school-wide level. And for me, the tech was always there to put powerful things in young hands and help them do creative things and do impressive things, and to be expressive with it. So for me, it was far less about the tech and far more about the creative potential. So yeah, there was kind of that at the learner facing end, and then needing to help design strategic processes and some of that big picture thinking at the school leadership end. That kind of those things developed in parallel to each other. And I guess kind of at the end of that 6 years, I had sort of hit a point where I thought, right, I feel like in order to really keep doing that powerful stuff in the hands of learners stuff and the creative stuff, I'm not sure how much more of that I can achieve working for a technology company. So that was, yeah, I just wanted to broaden the lens to, be able to really naturally talk well-being, talk community, talk all those kind of other moving parts without it necessarily being through a lens of technology. So that was when I stepped out as a solo entrepreneur.
Solopreneur, I think we call that,
Yeah,
right?
so I think we do.
Yeah. There's a term for that. Yeah.
There is.
Yeah. So talk to me more about this creative side. So you were using the technology to enhance creativity with the students. What does that look like? What are we talking about
So,
there?
I mean, it was like a lot of it was as simple as being really fluent in using media tools so that kids were able to demonstrate and make the thing rather than just explain about the thing.
Okay.
So
Multimedia,
yeah, lots. I mean, that was
picture,
kind of
sound,
right.
yeah,
Yeah,
video.
that was kind of right at the heart of a lot of the work I was doing.
Mm.
Yeah.
But you weren't teaching. Well, was this in the context of, I'm trying to picture what class you're in. Is this an art
Yeah.
class? Is this a history, an English?
So I was a primary teacher. So
Okay.
I taught across the curriculum. So, I had kids. We used a lot of video in my classroom. So,
Okay.
I had kids making little documentary films, and their science things. They'd turn those into pretty cool sort of content. I haven't actually gone back and looked up any of my old students to see how many of them are
Yeah.
reasonably fluent YouTubers now.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know.
Okay. Yeah. No, that would be interesting to
Yeah.
yes, find out. I mean, there's no question that teachers influence us, right? You
Yes.
meet somebody like you, and you're fun and interesting, and really want people to be creative. I think that yeah, kids go
Hmm.
on to be more creative because somebody
Yeah. I
encouraged
mean,
them that way.
for me, I kind of believe and have always believed that creative is just our natural state. So, kids come into my classroom. I just want them to turn out their best self. And to me, that is a person who is in touch with their creative capacities.
Yeah. Cool. So you went on and you started your own business.
Started my own
and
business.
Started your own business. And we're going to get to the Lego thing, I swear.
Yeah.
But
We'll get there
I,
eventually.
yeah. No,
Yeah.
well, for me, all of these things, it's a process, right?
Yes.
You get there and it's context that builds, right? Your previous
Yeah.
experiences all, I believe, kind of build on us. Rarely have I met anybody who just boom, pivot, went left and left everything else they'd done behind, and it didn't influence what they're doing now, right?
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
so that's why I drag you through this process of unfold. How did you get to here? Yes. I want to understand, right? What made
Yeah,
you
yeah.
the way you are now? So, all right. So now you're on your own and you can go do the way you want to do it. So what
Yep.
was the vision there? What did you take into the schools now that you couldn't do when you were working for an IT services company?
Yeah, so basically the most liberating part was being able to go, so we're here to do some creative stuff. We're here to really exercise the kids' creativity, and let's talk process. Leave the iPads in the cupboard. We're doing this with a stack of cardboard boxes.
Okay.
And you're going to do the design in 3 frames on the pavement in chalk. And all I'm going to give you is a big prompt, but I will have briefed the teachers before school on on some processes that we can use. So yeah, it allowed me to bring things like whole school design sprints in. So there was a school I worked with up in the north part of our state in Western Australia who had two. Now let me see if I can remember this right. They had 1 or 2 playgrounds that were due to be decommissioned. And this is in the really hot, sunny, dry parts of the state. So these playgrounds were undercover. And because there was an existing roof, they could do whatever they wanted under it without needing to get, kind of external planning and building approval. They had partnered with an engineering firm in a neighboring mining town for fabrication, who were also partnering with the senior high school for some upper school design students. And so we asked the kids what they wanted in their playgrounds, but we wanted to give it a science focus.
Okay.
So I threw them a prompt about what we can learn from nature, and took them through a whole day's process and got them designing it and building mock-ups in out of cardboard and craft materials.
Yeah.
Then we kind of had almost like a science fair sort of format where they could all come and check out each other's things across classes. And rather than just voting, I sort of treated it more like a VC fund. So every kid got $100 in play money, and there was an envelope attached to each project, which kind of took away the impact of kids just voting for their friends. Because I could go, yeah, okay, well, look, I will give my friends $20 of my 100, but I really like that thing over there, so they're getting 50. I should probably give my younger siblings, I should probably chuck $10 into theirs as well. So I think you just got a much more honest and egalitarian sort of thing that just minimize competitive loyalties, I guess.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
It also reminds me of another guy I had on the show, Ben Edmonds. I don't know if you saw that episode, but Ben does a thing called the Inventors Club. And it's basically a very similar kind of concept. He gives them a problem, gives them no instructions on how to solve it, and cardboard and glue and whatever,
Amazing.
and says build something. And
amazing.
yeah, and anyway, they've developed a whole set of these projects which they're now kind of formalizing more. Well, anyway, he realized this thing didn't scale because it was all kind of based on him running these workshops and
It's a challenge,
leading the kids through it. So anyway, but no, I love that concept, and I think again, I think we tend to hold kids' hands too much and say,
Yeah.
here, go do this and do it this way, blah, 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 right? We give them too many instructions and then they don't learn much from it because they're just following, step one, step two, step three, and they don't care why step three happens after step two. They just, the instructions say do it, so they do it. And we don't learn much when we just follow instructions. Um,
Is
much
that the
more.
segue into Lego?
There
Is
it
that the
is.
segue to talk about Lego?
Yes. So tell me about Lego Serious Play. What is it?
Yeah.
Why are you doing this? How'd you get doing
Yeah.
it?
So Lego Serious Play is it's a method to help groups of adults have important, creative, honest conversations about whatever it is that they're doing. The smallest group that I've done this with is I just sit and do it myself if I've got something on my mind that I want to straighten the threads out in my head.
Okay.
And I've used it one-on-one in coaching conversations, all the way up to a room of 150 people. So
That's a
yeah,
truckload of Legos.
that's a lot. That was several trips up and down the stairs with with multiple suitcases and the concierge staff of the venue giving me some really funny looks.
Yeah.
Yeah, so really and what it does is it uses some of the science of kind of the hand brain connection, a lot of the big thinking that underpins play-based learning and constructivist learning and constructionist learning to get people thinking at their best, communicating really well with a lovely kind of padding of psychological safety underneath it. And just it designs its way around a lot of your conventional barriers to communication that we encounter when we normally meet. I use it with adults. It was designed for adults. There are definitely people that use it with kids, and I'm starting to experiment with it more in that space. Just, when I've always been a big advocate coming from my background in learning tech, instructional coaching, where my whole thing, my biggest thing there was trying to get teachers to use that tech for themselves rather than just running straight for lesson ideas and straight for classroom project ideas. Kind of had that real fit your own oxygen mask before helping others type approach.
Yeah.
And so when I work with schools, they'll be like, great, show us how we can do this with kids. So, well, no, I'm not the guy you're looking for. But your school and your school community is also full of adults, and things for your kids work out a lot better when those adults are communicating really, really well. So we could focus on having some great conversations with them. We could, if you want to pursue training, we could train up half a dozen of the people in your school as facilitators. So you don't need me. You can do it yourself. And then because those are the people that know your kids well, that's going to be the most powerful way to bring it into those spaces where your young people are, rather than just kind of parachuting in the external expert, like create your own experts.
So why is the play element important there, right? It's called
Yeah,
serious play.
serious
Why,
play.
why
So
does play matter in this context?
yeah, so the idea is that because like everyone that I think everyone that's done a job on a team somewhere has probably had a crappy team day that has involved Lego at some point. And so kind of one of the important distinctions here is that this is something that you get the serious work done through play. And the idea there is that by being playful about anything, you're really kind of activating your best thinking. And in the work that I've done, kind of the observations that I've made around that by approaching important things playfully, the perceived stakes attached to it seem to just sort of drop, because very, very quickly, like I'm in there asking big questions of people, and I'm asking them to build models that help them communicate their take on the idea. So the way a conventional session works is I put a bag of Lego in front of people. I'll ask them a big, wide open-ended question that is designed to invite as many perspectives on the topic as there are people around the table. They use the Lego bricks as metaphors to help them communicate their ideas. They build a model, and then one by one, they tell a story about that model without looking at each other in the eye. So everyone kind of gets this moment of personal reflection. So it's kind of like taking things away, brainstorming individually, and then bringing it back to the group rather than trying to, kind of everyone brainstorm in the hot seat and contribute together. So you do away with that anxiety by, everyone will have their own preference and bias towards wanting to talk ideas out, or wanting to represent something visually, or wanting to experience it kinesthetically. This process gives every single one of those people a very natural feeling starting point, while also just giving their brain a little bit of a pull to experience the same challenge, the same prompt from those other perspectives. So they're thinking about it from different viewpoints within their own head before they've even opened their mouth to share it with anyone. And because you've got that facilitated turn taking to share, you don't have 20% of the people doing 80% of the talking. You get 100% of the people around the table sharing 100% of their ideas, and the people that normally get talked over don't get talked over, and the people who normally do the talking over have a dedicated time to shut their mouth. So I like that it polices people like me.
And me. Yes. I like to talk.
Yeah. So, and the fact that, so I saw you, I saw your eyebrows pop when I said you don't look each other in the eye when you're presenting it. So what that does is it just gives that model builder and that storyteller a little moment where it's far less like standing up and presenting to the group, and far more like just an extension of building it. So, building it is a very visual and kinesthetic experience. This adds the verbal element to it without it needing to, feel confrontational at all, and without it needing kind of that anxiety of making a presentation. So, and they're also talking about something that is external to themselves. And it's this model that just sits on the table by itself. It's disconnected from the persona that put it there. And it just becomes one of the sets of ideas that are now in the mix to move forward into whatever you do with those models collectively.
What's an example of something somebody would need to build? So I'm just trying to think in a corporate setting. I'm trying to solve a sales channel problem, right? And what do I build to come up with ideas?
So alongside spending a lot of time with rock and roll, I've also been accused of being a little bit like a TV chef. So in the spirit of that, here's one I prepared earlier. So I thought I'll create a Lego Serious play model to bring and to bring to the conversation.
Show and tell. Thank you.
I brought some show and tell. Yeah. So I'll just share this to you the way that I would share it in a session. So the question that I built to was, as educators, what's a big challenge facing our profession at the moment? So here's what I've built. The whole thing kind of revolves, rather than being around the model, the little people here and what's in front of them, it's really about this wall. And there's this big sort of wall between what education systems really value and show us that they value by what they measure, and what the world outside of education is asking for. So industry and employers are asking for one set of things, and education systems seem to be prioritizing something else. So really, what I'm seeing more and more, this is kind of the push I'm seeing in Australia, is to treat learners as empty vessels to be filled, and to kind of create these hurdles of standard assessment for them to jump over in a very predictable way. On the other side, and this is kind of what the world outside wants, there's there is so much opportunity for young people leaving formal education now to go off on many different paths and really kind of grow and blossom in many different directions. Some of those directions are really colorful. Some of them don't necessarily go anywhere. There's not something attached to each of these branches. Sometimes they might just have to backtrack to something else. But, we are living twice as long as we were 100 years ago. So, like, they got time. Young goes for a lot longer than it used to. And kind of this kind of approach here, and this is really sort of what employers are demanding here. They want people with empathy, and they want people who can grow their ideas, and they want people. There's a little chameleon there. That's to kind of say we want people that can be adaptable to their surroundings, and can kind of change up how they show up depending on what the situation demands. And that's kind of the domain of wisdom rather than just knowledge and information. And it's kind of all that sort of thing. That's where the magic happens, and that's this is the pathway for their own ideas to bear some fruit. And so so really kind of it's about that wall. And this is what the data captures, and this is the stuff that is difficult to measure, and almost like trying to measure it kind of ruins it a little bit. So yeah, this is where trusting play and trusting being playful and focusing on exercising it rather than just measuring it. That's where I fit in. Other people can work out the metrics. That's their job.
Yeah. No, that was a great example too. That really helped me understand better kind of what the exercise is like. And there's so many ways I could go from here. So one of the things I think about, I talk a lot about games in education. So, I mean, games are also playful and designed, well, it's not really a game unless it's fun, right? You want to enjoy it, and you're trying to get into that engagement and get people really playing so that they're kind of distracted from the learning, right? I'm learning, but I don't realize I'm learning because it doesn't feel like I'm learning. It feels like I'm playing, and it's kind of all good. But one of the other challenges, that I really related to there, and we've talked about this quite a bit, games tend to be more kind of free form. So a really good game, a creative game, a narrative game, kind of lets you explore, right? It's not one fixed path, right? I don't go lesson 1, lesson 2, lesson 3. I go in this environment and I start to explore, and I decide, oh, I want to go this way, right? And I learn something over here, and then maybe I hit something I can't solve, and I realize, oh, wait, I got to go back and do some of these other things that are in the environment, because the answer, is I can't progress until I actually go do these other things. So you still get them to do the things you want them to do. They just have to decide to do it when they want to do it. And what I've found is, for some teachers, this is really, really hard, right? This idea of kind of letting go of a structure and a scaffolding that says you have to learn this first, and then you have to learn that. And then, these things build on each other, and say, no, let them figure it out. They may learn it out of order, but eventually, right, they're going to start putting it together and realize, oh, okay, yeah, I need to understand this other thing, or I need to conquer this, solve this problem to get to that problem and advance, right, and progress through the game. But games also kind of naturally measure themselves, right? Your progress defines the fact that you're moving forward, right? I have a metric. You got through this level, right? You have progressed. I don't need to give you a test, right? You got through it. That was the test. Could you pass the level, right? And so yeah, no, there's a lot of correlation here in terms of the kind of thought process about why we do this, right? We want you to be free and play and experience it in the way you want to experience it.
Yeah. And I think probably there's probably even an interesting distinction there, where like in a game, the answers are in the environment, and the answers are in the, in that progression. But having that progression there and those objectives and the fact that the clues are built into it, that's a level of structure that is there in a game that is not necessarily there in something that just opens up play and asks some questions. So I think probably the distinction here is Lego serious play works when the answers are in the room, but not necessarily. But I think, yeah, from what you were saying there, I think you're getting at the idea that, you know, the answers are in the game, they're in the environment.
Yeah.
And they're in those in the surroundings. This is that really, really generative thing of, you know, it's got so much in common with that design challenge kind of approach where it's like, here's what we're here to talk about. What are you as participants bringing to that? And my, you know, I think this is probably a pretty good example of the level of diversity that's in my Lego bags. I like to keep them full of pretty weird and wild stuff. You know, there's a mix of, you know, plants and animals and you know, Technic and machine type parts, but, you know, I like to keep it quite organic, quite, you know, and bits of day-to-day stuff as well, just to really let the pile of Lego speak to someone's thought process and just generate a million happy accidents of kind of idea colliding with something that could work for physical form.
Yeah.
And helping jog that along.
So do you have a story of a session you did with somebody that turned out to be just, I mean, by the end of the thing, you know, people were just abuzz because some great idea seemed to be surfacing, or a consensus around something where there wasn't consensus before?
Yeah, I mean, a million of them, because it's like it's what this process does really well. So, you know, some of the really interesting ones I've done, I was actually working on Saturday with a group of dads from my daughter's school. So for our Parents and Citizens Association fundraiser last year, I donated a workshop, and I got a text on the evening of the fundraiser, because I couldn't go, I had another thing on, from one of the mums from my daughter's class saying, "Joel, there's a group of moderately inebriated dads who have just pooled their resources and they've bought your workshop. This is going to be really funny because my husband's one of them." so anyway, finally got this group of dads together, and it was really lovely to step away from the work scenario there and really kind of talk about friendship and talk about how they can show up for each other and what they look for in friends, and how their friendship impacts their ability to show up as great partners and great parents. So that was a really, really wonderful thing. I haven't written that up yet, but it deserves it. I worked with a brand new school that I think they opened in, just before the pandemic. So we kind of got, we got to about mid-March, and I sent the leadership team an email just going, "I am so glad we did that workshop," because it's, I I can see you having lots of situations where this is going to be really useful. That was about deliberately establishing some guiding principles for their culture, for their staff culture. So I took them through a process of asking, again, sort of what they individually bring to a team, and then what they look for in an ideal teammate. And they built that individually. Then they built the real core parts of that together into some shared models. Then we looked at kind of elements of a great workplace, and we laid that out across the table so they could visualize all those moving parts in a system. And then we extracted the stories from those, and I took them through a writing process where we turned them into some nice tight little guiding principles. And they were the sorts of things that really spoke to, we all succeed better if, if we allow ourselves to succeed individually. And I'll see if I can pull them up because
Well, I was
they
just
were
going to
pretty.
say,
Yeah.
I just love the idea of that kind of collective coming up with the values. Almost every large organization I've worked for in the last, 20 years or whatever, part of orientation was, you were given a list. Here are the company values, right?
Yes.
It wasn't, is this your values or, oh, you got
Yeah.
hired because, we think you align with these values, but it was just, here's a list, it's a bulleted list, maybe it's on a poster somewhere in the HR area, but it's, yeah, these are the company values. And it wasn't
Yeah.
a collaborative agreement that,
No.
you know,
Well, this was
yeah.
the beauty of working with a brand new team coming together. And values was one of the things that we talked about, but we put it on a continuum where at one end there was values, at the other end was rules. Rules are far too rigid, too low level, and don't give enough credit to the person that they apply to. Values at the other end, they're very high level, very open to interpretation,
Mm,
and they're necessary to have. They're fascinating to talk about, but they don't give you enough to use in a moment where you need to make a decision.
mm,
So our Goldilocks zone was kind of halfway between those, but then we also wanted to avoid them sounding like, we turned it into a 2x2 matrix. So the other axis had policy statements at one end where they're very actionable and precise, but they're very verbose and forgettable. And at the other end of that was just platitudes. So they feel nice, they sound good, they're memorable, but they're ultimately pretty useless.
yeah.
Goldilocks zone was right in the middle of those, and they came out with, what have we got? Make sure conversations you start get finished.
Hmm. Okay.
No, it sounds really simple, but there was stuff on the table that talked about problems arising but not getting solved.
Right.
There was a fantastic one. This took a few goes to get it right, but it was talk and listen kindly about small problems so we don't have to talk about big ones.
Mm.
Um, don't let perfect ruin good. Turn up, tune in, take action. So just
Yeah.
really, really great things. And I bumped into one of the teachers about 2 years after I did the workshop, and we were in line at the same coffee shop. I said, "Oh, hey, you were at that school. How are those? Are those things still around?" She said, "Yeah, they're on the walls in every building. We 6 months down the line, we decided that two of them were too similar, so we merged them. And there was another thing that just emerged in conversation, so we've added another one in its place." I love that they became these living and breathing things that didn't sit still as their school grew, but we really set a lovely foundation for that to happen. I think probably the other thing that has been a really, really wildly successful thing was when I've helped schools help schools interview their prospective staff.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I,
And you do that playfully?
I do it exactly the same way. Introduce it and say, "Look, I hope this isn't the weirdest." Like, yeah, I'm certain this is the weirdest job interview you've had to date, but I hope it's not the weirdest one you have for your whole life.
Okay.
Mm.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, well, we could have a whole nother conversation about that. I hate
Yeah.
the interview process. I think
Everyone does.
I actually published an article once called "Interviews Suck."
Yep.
Why do we keep doing it this way, right?
I should
So
find that and reference it in my notes.
yeah. Yes, I hate it as a way to hire people. But anyway, that's a whole nother topic aside from Lego serious play. So it's very interesting. And just a side note, when I mentioned to my wife that I was going to talk with you, she works for Apple, and Apple
Oh,
has
cool.
done one of these sessions
Nice.
apparently here in Kong. So yeah, they had the leadership team get together and do a Lego
Amazing. That's good to
based
know.
yeah talk. Anyway, I guess it went well because she thought it was a great idea. Yeah,
Fantastic.
she's on the HR side. Yeah. So
Nice.
yeah,
Nice.
Yeah, yeah, she understood right away what it was. And it's
Yeah,
like, oh yeah, yeah, we did that at Apple. It's good.
we've done that. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, anything else you wanted to share that I haven't asked you
Um,
about, you were hoping to talk about today?
really, that was I turned up to talk shop and talk about Lego and talk about big creative conversations and kind of the power that they can have. When one of the challenges I found getting started in this was schools, particularly teachers in schools, trusting play to get important stuff done.
Mm.
And that took a little bit, but kind of once they were over that initial hurdle, that's when it really started to do some amazing things. So
Yeah, I think kids naturally know how to play, but I think by the time we're adults, it's been kind of beaten out of us.
been
And
beaten
we
out of
have to
us. Yeah.
remember how to play. Yeah.
Yes.
Yep. So,
Yeah.
yep. I actually remember becoming a parent and realizing how wonderful that was for me to start getting down on the floor again and playing with blocks and toys and Legos and all that stuff. I was like, oh, this is so good for me too, to just, yeah, be silly
Just
and
play.
goofy and
Yeah.
play and, do these games with my kids. And yes, I do encourage any adult, if you really want to boost your day, go just sit on the
Mm.
floor with a kid and play.
Yeah.
Forget about the news, forget about politics, forget about work stress, just play a game.
Yeah.
Anything. Yeah. So it's good. I think it's healthy.
It is. It
In
is.
many ways. Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well,
So
Joel, thank you so much for spending some time with me today and talking about this stuff. I think it is great, and I hope that more folks out there are embracing the power of play, and for adults and for kids, it's a great way to learn and say clearly, what you're finding. It's a great way to connect people and
yes.
empower them to make group decisions and um, build relationships. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
awesome.
well, thank you for having me on. I'm planning to be in Asia in the second half of this year, running some training courses, meeting with some schools. So, anyone that's interested to find out a little bit more and have a little bit of a demonstration for their team, I'm always happy to drop a bag of Lego on the table over a coffee.
Awesome. Well, we'll have a link
And
in the show notes
put a link in the
to
show
your
notes. Fantastic.
site there, and yeah, and if there's anything else you want to share, you want me to put in the show notes, just send it on over, and I will do that.
Great. No, I think my website's a really great starting point. You can get out to any version of a thing that I do from that one starting point. So I like to
Perfect.
make it as easy as possible for people.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, Eric.
As always, I have learned some stuff during this conversation. I thought it was important that the description there regarding the way games have the learning embedded in them. And as Joel pointed out, the answers are in the game, but with serious play, the answers are in the room, right? They're with the people who are participating. And the goal is to facilitate the open discussion with creativity and collaboration that allows the answers to surface. I also love the approach that guarantees that everyone in the room has a voice and is heard. And I love that the science fair like approach that he took to getting kids to design their own playground area. He really is finding ways to make pedagogy more egalitarian. I'm Eric Byron. Thanks for listening to the Education Innovators Podcast. If you have not subscribed yet, please do that and share with others. We've got lots of great stories of innovation and education lined up for this summer, so you don't want to miss them. Thanks to all those education innovators out there, you are making a difference.